They live-streamed my wife's funeral, without inviting me. Her family stood around the casket, sobbing, blaming me in the eulogy, calling me a murderer, while thousands watched. I found out from a stranger who sent me the link. My son was in the front row, in their arms. My son, and I was banned from my own wife's funeral. My name's Raiden. I'm 31, a mechanic in a coastal backwater town called Greystone, Georgia. I was a husband, a dad, a simple guy, really, until the crash turned me into a headline, a courtroom regular, and apparently a monster. It happened on a Tuesday. Not that it matters. Days haven't meant much since that night. We were heading to my wife's parents' house for her dad's 60th birthday. Maria was buzzing with excitement, holding our toddler Lucas in the back seat while singing along to 80s tunes and giving me hell for driving like a retired turtle. We were late. We're always late. She hated it more than I did. Halfway through, the old truck gave up. Smoke billowed. I cursed and pulled over on a shoulder that barely existed. Maria panicked. We were still an hour out. I told her I'd handle it. I crawled under the truck, busted my knuckles trying to unjam a seized bolt, and nearly blacked out from the pain. Something snapped in my wrist. I was done. She grabbed the keys and told me to hop in the passenger seat. "We're late enough already, Ray," she said, buckling Lucas into his car seat. She kissed my forehead like she always did when she wanted to win an argument. The road had turned slick. Light rain, just enough to make asphalt into glass. She was overtaking a white SUV when the car hit the shoulder. One tire slipped. Just one. We spun. I remember her scream, the sound of metal screaming louder. The car flipped once, then twice. Then we weren't on the road anymore. When I woke up, I thought it was a dream. There was silence. Then Lucas cried. Then I saw her. Maria's body was twisted, crushed. Her eyes were open. She wasn't breathing. I tried to crawl toward her. My arm wouldn't move. My leg bent the wrong way. I screamed, not from pain, from something deeper, something human can't explain. The paramedics said I passed out from blood loss. I woke up 2 days later in the hospital. Casts, tubes, machines. But none of that mattered, because my wife was dead. And my son. My son was now a bargaining chip in a war I didn't see coming. Maria's parents, Dale and Cinda, stormed into the hospital like they owned the place. They didn't look at me. Didn't speak to me. Just took Lucas and left. No one asked me. 2 days after that, her obituary came out. No mention of me. Not even a survived by her husband. A week later, I got served. They were suing for full custody, claiming I was unfit, said the crash was my fault, said I pressured Maria to drive in dangerous conditions, that I killed her. I had no family to back me. I was an orphan, raised in foster care. I had no savings left after the funeral bills, therapy for Lucas, and paying a lawyer who clearly didn't care. I tried to visit my son. They slammed the door in my face. Then they filed a restraining order. A restraining order against me for trying to see my own child. I lost everything in that crash, but I hadn't cried until I found the live stream. It popped up in a Facebook message from a stranger. "Thought you should see this," they wrote. There was the funeral. The camera focused on Lucas, asleep in Cinda's arms. Then Dale gave a eulogy. And he said, if only she had stayed home. If only she didn't trust that man to keep her safe. She'd be alive. I couldn't breathe. I smashed the screen. Then I fell apart. That night, I almost ended it. I had a bottle of sleeping pills and a letter written. But something stopped me. It wasn't hope. It was rage. They stole my son. They dragged my name through the dirt. But I wasn't going to disappear. I was going to fight. I didn't sleep for 3 nights. I read that article in the Greystone Tribune again and again. Local woman dies in fiery rollover. Husband escapes with minor injuries. Minor injuries? I had 2 fractures and a plate in my leg. But that wasn't even the worst part. The journalist wrote, the husband, Raiden Cleary, has not yet been charged. Not yet? They made it sound like I murdered her on purpose. When I limped into my first court hearing for custody, Dale was already there in a designer suit, pretending to mourn like a politician at a funeral. Cinda had Lucas in her arms, dressed in a tiny sweater that Maria had bought for his 2nd birthday. I'd bought it with her. That sweater was supposed to be a memory. Not a weapon. Cinda looked through me like I was a ghost, a dangerous one. Their attorney painted me as a reckless orphan with no support system, no house, no job. I was on medical leave, for God's sake. And this one cut the deepest, unstable mental health. They waived a copy of my prescription for antidepressants like it was a gun. She's dead because of him, Dale said on the stand. Maria would still be alive if he didn't force her to drive that night, I shouted. That's a lie! The judge banged her gavel. Mr. Cleary, one more outburst and I'll hold you in contempt. Contempt? I wanted to leap over the bench and scream in their faces. You think I wanted her to die? You think I didn't beg her to slow down? You think I haven't replayed that crash in my head 1,000,000 times? They submitted the live stream as evidence of public sentiment. The comments were brutal. He should be in jail. Poor baby, growing up with that murderer. She deserves justice. Justice? Where was mine? I lost temporary custody, just like that. No warning, no mercy. The judge said I needed to stabilize my life before reapplying. Until then, I'd get supervised visitation, once a week, 1 hour, with a monitor. That night, I crawled into my garage, my old shop. Maria and I built that place together. We painted the damn walls. There was still a smudge of blue from when Lucas dipped his hand in the bucket and smacked the drywall. I stared at that handprint for hours. I wanted to burn the place down. Instead, I grabbed my wrench and started working. Not on a car, on a plan. Would fix everything. I didn't know how yet, but I would. Step 1, fire my lawyer. Useless snake charged me $200 just to tell me, you'll probably lose. Step 2, find dirt on Dale. I didn't trust that man. Something about his rehearsed grief felt too perfect, like he was enjoying my destruction. Step 3, get a job. Even if it meant crawling to the garage every day with my leg brace squeaking, like a damn shopping cart. I couldn't sleep in the house anymore, not after they took Lucas. Every room screamed Maria. Her perfume on the pillow, her baking cookbook open to the page with the cherry scone recipe she never finished. So I lived in the garage, cold floor, no heat, rats in the walls, and 1 chair. I found in the alley behind the hardware store. I worked on junk cars for cash, posted flyers, begged old clients, told them, pay what you want. I just need something to keep me breathing. Most ghosted me, but one woman didn't. She showed up 3 weeks later in a busted Honda Civic and a bright yellow beanie, snapping photos with a camera older than my truck. You're Raiden, right? She asked. I squinted through the morning fog. Yeah. Who's asking? Sylvia. I wrote that article. My stomach dropped. You? You wrote the piece that made me look like a criminal? She looked down. I didn't expect it to go that viral. I was just doing my job. I wanted to scream. To throw her camera in the ditch and ask if she'd sleep well knowing Lucas would grow up hating me because of her words. But she said something that stopped me cold. I think I made a mistake, and I want to make it right. She handed me a coffee and an envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper, a new article. The Other Side of Grief. Father fights for son after tragic loss. I want to tell your story, she whispered. The truth this time. And just like that, hope cracked through the wreckage. But I had no idea just how viral this new article would go, or how much it would destroy what was left of Maria's perfect family facade. The new article hit the paper on a Monday. By Wednesday, I had 3 interviews lined up, 12 donation emails, and 1,000 angry comments under the Tribune's Facebook page, calling out the biased slander against a grieving father. Sylvia's story wasn't just good, it was brutal. She laid out every lie Dale and Cinda pushed in court. She quoted my hospital records. She published dashcam footage from the truck behind us. You could hear me yelling, "Maria, slow down! Please!" just seconds before the crash. The audio went viral, 10 million views in 4 days. Suddenly, the narrative flipped. I wasn't a villain anymore. I was a widower trying to stay alive for his kid. Strangers sent diapers. Grocery cards. One woman mailed me a teddy bear with a note. For Lucas, he'll need this when he comes home. And then came the money. Venmo. PayPal. My dead checking account started dinging with alerts every hour. $25 from Ohio. $50 from some guy in Utah who lost his wife too. Then $150. Then $500. And then the big one, a wire transfer of $10,000 from someone named Hope for Fathers. I stared at it for 10 minutes. I hadn't seen 5 digits in my account since Maria and I sold our first car together. I fixed up the garage, bought insulation, a heater, food that wasn't ramen, rehired a real lawyer, one with a spine. I filed for emergency custody appeal. Dale and Cinda freaked. Suddenly, they weren't camera happy anymore. They shut down interviews, blocked comments, hired a PR firm. Their neighbors started whispering. Parents at the church daycare started asking questions, and that's when the real bomb dropped. One of Sylvia's readers, some random guy named Cody, who worked in payroll at Dale's company, sent her an anonymous tip. "Check out his expense reports," he wrote. Turned out Dale had been embezzling money, thousands. Over 6 years, private investigators found the receipts, casino trips, jewelry for a woman who wasn't Cinda, and 5 prepaid debit cards all in his name. Sylvia went nuclear. She didn't just write an article. She did a podcast expose with interviews, screenshots, whistleblowers, the whole works. Holy Father-in-law was trending on Twitter by the weekend. The church kicked him off the deacon board. The local news did a live segment. Lucas's face flashed on screen with my name underneath. Father fights for justice. The next hearing felt different. People stood outside the courthouse with signs. Let Raiden raise his son. Grief guilt. One kid even held a toy truck with Lucas written on the side in Sharpie. Inside, Dale looked gray, shrunken. Cinda wouldn't even make eye contact. My lawyer tore into them. Your Honor, this man has faced grief, physical injury, character, assassination, and attempted parental alienation. And yet he stands. What exactly are we punishing him for? Then came the judge's decision. We are granting Mr. Cleary full temporary custody of his son, effective immediately, with visitation. Terms for the grandparents to be decided at a later date. I couldn't breathe. The bailiff had to repeat it. Lucas. My son. Coming home? Cinda wailed like someone had died. Dale sat frozen like a statue in a burning building. Outside, Sylvia snapped a photo of me holding Lucas for the first time in 3 months. His little arms wrapped around my neck like he never wanted to let go. I missed you, Daddy, he whispered. I sobbed like a man whose soul had been returned. But of course, peace doesn't last. That night, I found my garage door kicked. In tools scattered, my heater smashed, spray paint on the wall in angry red letters, monster, whoever did it. They wanted me to know. The war wasn't over. I called the cops, filed a report. Sylvia stayed the night in case they came back. And as we sat on the garage floor eating cereal from the box, she asked the one question I'd been avoiding. Raiden. What really happened that night? Before the crash? I stared into the dark. And I told her the one truth I hadn't spoken to anyone, not even myself. Maria had gotten a text. From someone named M. She read it. Locked. Her jaw. Then floored the gas. I never asked her what it said. But now, I wasn't so sure the crash was just an accident. Maria had secrets. That text? It wasn't just a warning. It was a smoking gun. He knows. He's going to say something. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I couldn't pretend she was just a victim of the rain and bad luck. No, something else caused that crash, and I was going to rip it wide open. So I went back to her phone. I paid a guy named Jonas, ex-IT tech with a felony record and an alcohol problem, $300 cash to recover deleted messages. He sat in my garage eating saltines and swearing at the screen while Lucas watched cartoons on an iPad someone had mailed us. An hour later, Jonas looked up, face pale. You might want to sit down, man. I didn't. He handed me a printed thread. Maria and M had been texting for months. It wasn't casual. It was an affair. Photos, voice memos, plans. I can't wait to leave this life behind, she wrote. I feel like I'm suffocating. Raiden's a good dad, but I'm not in love anymore. She said I was too safe, too boring, that I worked too much, that I didn't see her anymore. I read it all. Every word, every emoji. Every damn I miss you that wasn't for me. I puked into a bucket and then cried for an hour straight, after everything I'd done to protect her memory. She had planned to leave me, take Lucas, run off with a guy I'd never even met. That guy? Emery Laskin, a dishonorably discharged Marine who now ran executive security consulting, whatever the hell that meant, in Millburn. And guess what? Dale had hired Emery's firm twice. Once for a church fundraiser, once for a corporate retreat. This wasn't random. I drove to the Millburn garage where she first met Emery. The owner, a guy named Al, said Maria brought her car in 3 times in 3 months. That redhead? He asked. Yeah, she and Emery always looked cozy, thought she was his wife. I laughed, loud, ugly. Then I asked Al if he had security footage. He did, and it was damning. They kissed behind the dumpster. He picked Lucas up. Maria smiled like she'd already moved on, and this was 2 weeks before she died. I brought the footage to Sylvia. She didn't blink. "This goes deeper," she said. "What if Emery sent that message, not to warn Maria, but to scare her?" I stared at her. "What if he wasn't just some fling?" she continued. "What if Dale hired him to shut her up?" It sounded insane, until it didn't. Maria told Harper she was going to tell me the truth after the birthday party. That night, she got the text. Then she panicked. Then she drove us into a ditch, but what if someone helped that happen? Sylvia started making calls, and she found something crazy. Emery disappeared. 3 days after the funeral, he sold his car for cash and vanished. No job, no forwarding address, nothing. His phone went dark, his apartment emptied. He just evaporated. And Dale? His company was in crisis. His board voted him out after Sylvia's second article. Donations to the church dried up. Cinda stopped showing up in court. They were cracking. I knew what I had to do. I went to the police. I brought the texts, the garage footage, the financial records, the burner phone analysis Jonas ran from my garage. The detective, Ramirez, looked at me for a long time after the file review. Then he said, "We're opening an investigation. If there's evidence of foul play, we'll find it." 2 days later, my house was broken into. Again, they didn't take anything. They left something. A burned photo of Maria and Lucas. No words. Just that. Message received. But I didn't back down. I slept in the garage with a baseball bat. I rigged cameras. I put Sylvia and Lucas in a friend's house across town. Because if someone was trying to scare me off, they just made the biggest mistake of their lives. Someone left a burned photo of my wife and son on my kitchen table. That wasn't a threat. It was a declaration. "You're next." I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just stared at that photo while every nerve in my body screamed for vengeance. My hands trembled. My chest ached. My soul was boiling with one question. Who the hell does this to a grieving father? I turned the garage into a war room. Sylvia helped me piece together timelines, contacts, names. Detective Ramirez called me. 2 days later, his voice was tight. "Raiden, we found something." He didn't tell me what over the phone, but when I arrived at the precinct, he slid a file across the table. My hands went cold. Inside? A printed statement from a woman named Eleanor Vance, a former administrative assistant at Dale's company, and Emery's ex-girlfriend. She confessed to everything. Dale knew about the affair, found out 6 months before the crash. But instead of confronting Maria, he did something darker. He contacted Emery directly, paid him a lot. To what? Shut her up? Scare her? Run her off? Nobody knew the exact terms. But Eleanor said she overheard Dale yelling into the phone 2 days before Maria died. She opens her mouth. "And you're done. Handle it, or I will." Handle it? Maria got that text from Emery minutes before she lost control of the car. Coincidence? Hell. No. Ramirez looked me dead in the eye. "We're pursuing charges. Criminal conspiracy. Possibly manslaughter. But we need to find Emery first." So I did something I swore I'd never do again. I called Harper. She hadn't spoken to her parents in weeks. Said Cinda had checked out completely, and Dale was holed up at some private lake house north of Greystone. She gave me the address and the code to the gate. I didn't tell Sylvia. I didn't tell the cops. I told Lucas I'd be back before sunrise, kissed his forehead, and drove into the woods with a Glock I'd bought after the break-in. My hands shook, but my mind was clear. I wasn't going there for answers. I was going for the truth. And maybe blood. The lake house sat alone, surrounded by pines. Windows dark. But the Range Rover in the driveway told me someone was home. I crept around the side, through mud and wet pine needles. Every snap of a branch made my heart hammer harder. I reached the back deck. And that's when I saw him. Emery. Alive. Shirtless. Smoking a cigar like he hadn't disappeared from the goddamn planet. I froze. His face was the same one from the security footage. Cold. Arrogant. Like nothing could touch him. I stepped into the light and raised the gun. "Don't move." He didn't even flinch. "So the grieving husband's got teeth," he said. "Took you long enough." I wanted to put a bullet between his eyes, but instead I asked the question that had eaten me alive for months. "Did you kill her?" Silence. Then a smirk. I didn't have to. She killed herself when she panicked. My finger twitched. "She would have told me the truth," I growled. "No, she wouldn't," he sneered. "She was leaving you, Raiden. You were never going to see your son again." "That did it?" I tackled him. The gun flew across the deck. We crashed through patio chairs and rolled into the wet grass. He got one punch in, then I broke his nose with mine. Blood everywhere. I didn't care. I wanted him to feel what I'd felt. Since that crash, rage, fear, helplessness, I wanted him to choke on it. But headlights appeared down the drive. Then, sirens. Sylvia. She'd tracked my phone. Cops stormed the deck, screaming for us to freeze. Emery tried to run. Ramirez tased him. Collapsed in the mud, shaking. Later, they told me Sylvia had followed me halfway and called it in when she saw Emery's car. She didn't trust me not to do something stupid. She was right, because I wanted to end him. Right there. But now the system would Emery was arrested on charges of obstruction, harassment, conspiracy to commit a felony, and the DA was pushing for attempted manslaughter. And Dale? His empire crumbled. The board forced him to resign. His church dropped him, and Cinda finally cracked. She signed an affidavit saying she knew about the payment to Emery but trusted her husband's judgment. She cried on the news. No one believed her. Sylvia's final article was titled, "The Fall of a Golden Family," and my name was finally cleared, but the war wasn't over yet, because there was still one thing left to do. The courtroom was dead silent as the verdict came down. Guilty. On all counts. Dale didn't flinch. He just stared ahead like his soul had checked out months ago. His hands were cuffed. Cinda sobbed behind him, mascara dripping down her, cheeks like ink on melting paper. The illusion of their perfect family shattered into ash. Right there, in front of everyone. Emery got 6 years. Not nearly enough, but enough to bury his reputation and ruin what was left of his life. Dale? 10 years. 10 years of watching the walls close in while I lived the life he tried to destroy. He looked at me once as they led him away. Just once. And I stared back, expressionless, because I'd already buried the part of me that needed his apology. After the sentencing, I walked out of the courthouse holding Lucas's hand. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. People clapped, as if justice could resurrect Maria, or fix the hole in my chest that never stopped bleeding. But justice was a start, and then came the next battle. Freedom. I sold the garage, bought a small fixer-upper on the edge of town. Clean air. No ghosts. A swing for Lucas and a room with dinosaur wallpaper he picked himself. Sylvia stayed. I never asked her to. One day she just showed up with a bag of groceries and a box of Legos and said, "I'm not going anywhere." That night I didn't argue. I just let her hold me while I cried like I hadn't since the crash. I started writing. Therapy at first, then articles, then a blog. People read it. A few even called me brave. I never felt brave, just tired. But people listened. And for once, I felt heard. Maria, I don't forgive her. There, I said it. She made her choices. She betrayed me, lied, risked our son's life. And when it all caught up to her, she panicked and drove us off a cliff. But I don't hate her either. She was broken, just like me, just like everyone else in this twisted mess. I visit her grave once a month. Lucas doesn't remember her much anymore. Just shadows of lullabies and that cherry pie perfume she wore when she dressed up. Sometimes he asks why Mommy went away. I tell him the truth. Mommy was scared. She made some bad choices, but she loved you. And I love you more than anything in this world. He always nods like that's enough. Maybe it is. A few weeks ago, I got a letter from Dale. Handwritten. I almost burned it. But I read it instead. Raiden, I was trying to protect our family's name. I didn't mean for her to die. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I'm sorry. I tore it up without replying. Not because I didn't care, but because it didn't matter anymore. His sorry couldn't unkill my wife. Couldn't unruin my life. He didn't protect the family's name. I did. And I did it by burning the lies down to the ground and building something honest from the ashes. The last twist? I turned my blog into a full-time gig. Father burned. Got picked up by a parenting site, then a publisher. Then someone said the magic words, "You ever think about writing a book?" Maybe I will, because this story isn't about a widow who got crushed by grief. It's about a man who lost everything and still stood up. A man who dragged the truth out of a grave, who looked evil in the face, and won. And if there's one thing I've learned after this hellstorm, it's that monsters don't live under the bed. They live in churches, in offices, in family portraits. But sometimes, if you fight hard enough, You get to be the monster they fear back. The end, and yeah, now I sleep just fine. And here it is, the finale of today's story. Did everything turn out as you imagined, or did it end unexpectedly? I'd love to hear what you think. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and let's dive into the discussion together. If this story kept you in suspense, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't signed up yet, what are you waiting for? This is your chance to join an incredible community where exciting new stories unfold every day. Click the subscribe button and turn on notifications to stay up to date. Thanks for your attention and see you on your new adventures.